Now, more of Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute, the only show directly addressing the problems and solutions for Illinois. Now, from AM 560, here's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft and Vice President of Policy at Illinois Policy Institute, Michael Lucci, joining me on this edition of Illinois Rising. And Michael, as usual, some interesting data collection and analysis by Illinois Policy Institute, your team over there. This about the labor force in Illinois and synthesizing some Bureau of Labor Statistics data to give us a picture of how Illinois' labor force compares to our Great Lakes neighbors. And what's the bad news?
Well, the bad news is, once again, over the warm season of the year, Illinois' labor force shrank. So what's likely happening, and we've seen this in previous summers also, is summers when people move. So when your labor force is shrinking every summer and people tend to move in the summer, a lot of that is because people are moving to other states to go get a job in another state during the summer. I mean, that's when it's going to happen. So we've seen this happen for Illinois consistently. The labor force in Illinois has shrank more than it has in any other state around us for, the past 8 years. But then we saw this sudden labor force dropout in this past summer. It's something that's been happening here, and it's economic reasons. People move for jobs.
And give us the numbers to give us some order of magnitude. Compare Illinois to, Michigan, Missouri, Wisconsin, Iowa, Indiana, our neighbors.
Illinois' workforce shrank by 104,000 people over the summer, whereas, Ohio was down about 70,000, Michigan 55,000. Iowa and Indiana actually had their workforces grow over the summer, and a state like Kentucky was more or less even over the season. But we see Illinois once again having the most shrinking of the workforce, while other states aren't even having that same effect, and states that do have workforce dropout don't have it nearly so bad.
I mean, that's huge. So April to September, so you're talking about 5 months this past summer, 104,000 loss in Illinois, 14,000 gain in our neighbor to the east, Indiana. That's a startling number, isn't it?
And some of that's just a transfer. Some of that is a transfer of Illinois workers to Indiana.
Right.
So that's part of what's happening. It's scary that Illinois has a long-term problem of the workforce shrinking because that shouldn't be happening. The population is still growing, but you're having the workforce shrinking. You're just having a smaller portion of the Illinois population actually working because a lot of people who want to work find that they have to go to another state to do it. And especially we find young folks are moving out, whether it's young taxpayers or young students. When you look at data from the IRS, taxpayers are moving out, especially young taxpayers. And we look at data from the Department of Education, students are moving out to go to university in other states.
And what happens when students leave to go to a college in another state? Oftentimes they don't come back, and they're not coming back to a state that doesn't have job opportunities in their chosen field of endeavor. And if you've got a labor force shrinking, that would seem to indicate that maybe there's not going to be a lot of job opportunities in a whole lot of fields of endeavor.
That's exactly right. And so we're seeing students dropping out of the state. We're seeing millennials dropping out of the state, working millennials dropping out of the state. They're going to find their future in a place that is more hospitable to job creation. And this is especially the case in some of the Rust Belt communities in Illinois. If you're a manufacturer, and we speak with manufacturers on this show, if you're a manufacturing worker and you want to find that job opportunity, most likely it's going to be in a Wisconsin or an Indiana, and you're going to have to make that move to go get that job.
I want to underscore millennials and young families because a couple weeks ago on this show, we talked to an analyst from the Granite Institute that had did some study of population inflows and outflows. And one of the things about Illinois, people leave because they want to retire to Florida, Arizona because of the cold winters. That's why people are leaving. And it's mostly seniors. And if you actually look at the data, according to this Granite Institute study that was done in conjunction with Illinois Policy, no, it's not. It's young families, 35 to 54, that are working their way up the ladder in whatever sector they're in, and who don't see the next rung for them in Illinois, and millennials. So it's the people that are entering the workforce and in their prime working years that are actually leading the exodus, and that really spells trouble.
Those are your taxpayers. Those are the people you need to try to fix this long-term debt liability that the state, that the cities have built up without those young taxpayers sticking around or even better moving in, the question is who's going to pay for those debts and for those liabilities. There's just not going to be enough people around to do that. And that's the problem that Illinois is facing right now. This problem is I think coming home even now. We're seeing that tax revenues are declining year over year in Illinois. And that happens when you have so many taxpayers move out and you have such poor job creation locally. So we're seeing this in the first couple months of the new year here, the new fiscal years, that Illinois' tax revenues are lower this year than they were last year with the same tax rates, everything being the same. It's because so many people are leaving.
And it makes the sense of urgency we should have about structural reform of state government that much more pressing, doesn't it?
Completely pressing. I mean, you can't solve a revenue problem by driving taxpayers out of the state. You can't solve a spending problem by hiking taxes on the people who are staying, giving them even more reason to move out of the state.